Yes, I do think that Asians are misrepresented and underrepresented in popular culture. I think Asians make up about 5% of the total US population, and yet we are not even given 5% in media.
I think Asians are underrepresented as well as misrepresented in media today because there's been a lot of whitewashing in Hollywood, where there would be stories or movies or books that would be turned into full-on Hollywood movies, yet there would be people who aren't Asian cast in those roles.
Media definitely portrays Asians as nerdy, and I think also as secondary, and it hasn't been until recently that we've seen Asians as protagonists. Usually Asians are secondary characters that serve a role to benefit mostly the white protagonist, and in that way it's devalued Asians as a people.
More like the side character, especially in Hallmark movies, like the token person of color. I think what any misrepresentations that come to mind would probably be like the guy in 16 Candles, and they're usually goofy or just really weird, and especially Asian males are treated as unattractive by default because they're Asian.
I think that they are misrepresented in the sense that they're often portrayed as certain stereotypes of Asians. Stereotypical Asian immigrant character that is often like a very racist portrayal of like an immigrant with an accent, like a heavy accent, and like that they don't really understand American culture, so they often play off of that or make comedic jokes about that. And then there's also like the Asian gangsters that they like to play off of. I think that Asian females in particular can be the submissive type, and like very gentle, obedient types that are in like the movies. So that character in Guardians of the Galaxy, she's an alien, but she's clearly Asian, but she's this very like quiet, soft-spoken character that like the other characters kind of can push her aside, or they don't really listen to her when she has things to say. And that seems to be very common with the Asian characters in the media, is that they're oftentimes sort of like a side character, a side female character that might be a love interest, but they're often very like obedient. They'll listen to whatever the males have to say, and in the end they're like completely erased from the film.
Yes, I think that the media absolutely perpetuates stereotypes of Asian people. And it's actually quite frustrating because even though Asians are considered a model minority, it damages in some ways personal success, because every time that you're successful, it's because of your race, not necessarily because of your merit, and that's extremely frustrating to me. I think it's been really difficult in some aspects because every time that I strive for success or strive for academic success, I think about how I'm also subscribing to Asian stereotypes, and I try to differentiate those two things. And I also think about the lens through which society sees my work ethic, in that I think that many times people, again, think that I am successful because I'm Asian, I work hard in school because of my race, which is not at all accurate. Those are two independent variables.
I mean, I have been asked before, because I do get good grades and I am very good at math, I have been asked, do your parents ever pressure you? Do they? And I'm like, no, I pressure myself if anything, but pretty sure I know where that assumption came from. People have treated me and other Filipinos differently for being Filipino in my hometown. For example, a lot of the Filipino girls at my middle school like to play and walk around in the quad and play ukulele. And there was this one time where they were all sitting at my table, and they were playing ukulele, and this table right next to us threw a box lunch at the ukulele and messed the instrument up, and they kind of just assumed we wouldn't do anything about it because we're Asian, and to be fair, we didn't. Not specifically towards me. I have heard on the second night of classes here, actually, I was in my dorm room, and there was this boy and this girl I could hear in the hallway, and I heard the boy say, "I'm gonna sing the Chinese song." And at first I was sure I heard him wrong, and I just kept doing what I was doing, and then seconds later I heard "Ching chong, ling long, ting tong," and second day of classes, I didn't want to start anything, but I considered maybe just popping my head out and looking at him like, I'm not Chinese, but would he even know that if he thought of that?
In high school, so that common phrase like "make me a sandwich," someone told me to make them a bowl of rice because they thought that all Asians just, I don't know, like had rice cookers with them 24/7 apparently, and that was extremely offensive, not only because it belittled females, but also it belittled my race.
If there's some sort of like Asian related content, people will often like look to me or something to be like, oh, like what do you have to say about this, or like what do you know about this? And I'm like, that's not necessarily my identity, like we're part of my culture, so I don't know, I don't have anything to say about it. Or if it is a part of my identity, then they think I'll like know everything or be like the expert on what to say about it.
I wouldn't answer in class, or I wouldn't raise my hand because people would think that like, oh, he's just being the Asian kid in the class again. But I realized to be proud of that, and to not be insecure about being smart or being funny, or these things about my personality, like not being insecure about them and just owning them.
I think that people would look at us differently depending on how media portrays us. A lot of the stereotypes that we infer in society are because of media, and so if media changes, perceptions about race will also change. I recently saw Crazy Rich Asians, and I think that was a pretty good representation of Asians. Because one, Asians were put into the primary lens of the movie. That was a pretty good representation of Asian culture, because where you do get the contrast between the stereotypical older traditions of Asian culture, which would be represented by the mother and her side of the family, you also get the more humanized and Western view through the eyes of, I think, Rachel, in the sense that we are not embodiments of stereotypes, and in fact, she shows the ways in which we attempt to extricate ourselves from stereotypes and become our own people in our own right.
I love To All the Boys I Loved Before and Crazy Rich Asians because I felt like these people were having the exact same struggles that everyone else in romantic comedies have had before, but I could relate to them, and I felt like the same things could happen to me, which I never felt could happen before because I couldn't relate to the people they were happening to before, the white Hallmark protagonists. I've seen Crazy Rich Asians, and again, I'm not Chinese, but that did exactly what I meant, where they delved into specifically the Chinese culture and didn't go into all Asian cultures. I appreciated how in To All the Boys I Loved Before, there were 3 different sisters who were all Asian, but they all had very different personalities and weren't one kind of Asian person. And I feel like people expect me to be a certain way because there's only one kind of Asian in the media. And just seeing people treat me like being Asian is just my race and not a defining part of my personality is something that I would really appreciate.
The two ones that come to mind immediately are Fresh Off the Boat and Crazy Rich Asians. I don't identify as either Chinese American or Chinese Singaporean, but there's something about watching those two shows that really resonated with me. It's different when there's like an entire studio or an entire production company backing up these stories. And I think those two specifically just comes to show like representation really matters.
I'd like to see media humanize Asians a little bit and stop casting them as secondary characters, as crazy characters, as submissive characters, and just see us through the lens of we are another human who has the same successes, has the same flaws as every other human.
I would rather see more than one Asian character in a media instead of just having that one token, like just take a normal character who is characterized in the exact same way everyone else is. And hell, they're also Asian. I want to see more characters that are Asian, but that's not a defining part of their personality, because I don't want being Asian to be a personality quirk. That's like saying being Asian or just not being white is different, and that kind of makes being white normal. And I don't want to feel like I'm not normal just because I'm Asian.
I would like to see the whole, like, everything about us represented, not just our stereotypes, not just our culture, but also like our experience as human beings.